Welcome to the Gospel for Men podcast. I'm your host, Mark Winton, Associate Pastor of Men's Ministry here at Grace PCA. And the simple purpose of this podcast is to encourage and equip you to live as gospel-formed men in this generation. This month's episode, I just want to highlight our upcoming August 2nd men's breakfast, 8 to 9:30 at the church gym. Jake is going to make his famous biscuits and gravy, and we're going to continue our discussion on Jesus as our forerunner. Particularly, last month or at the fish fry, we talked about Jesus as our forerunner as prophet. This month, we'll look at Jesus as our forerunner in his role and office as priest. Now, because our denomination's history is steeped in the Protestant Reformation, a lot of times we can neglect this important role of Jesus being our priest. But even in the Old Testament, as early as Genesis 14, we see that Melchizedek was a priest of God Most High. In Exodus, Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, was a father-in-law. His father-in-law was a priest of Midian. And in Leviticus and Numbers, plenty to say about the roles and responsibilities of priests. And one of the passages that we find today will be in the book of Hebrews, which is loaded with references to Jesus being our high priest. Gerhard Voss, a famous Reformed theologian, notes the difference between prophets and priests. You see, a prophet's role was more to represent God to man. A priest's role is more to represent man to God. And even our Westminster Confession of Faith, in the larger catechism, it says that Christ executes the office of a priest and is once offering himself as a sacrifice without spot to God, to be a reconciliation for the sins of his people, and in making continual intercession for them. Now, just a couple weeks ago, I visited the World War I Museum at the Liberty Memorial in downtown Kansas City. I took some of our summer staff joggers there. And while we were there, we were talking about spiritual warfare. But while we were there at the memorial, one of the exhibits they have is called Sacred Service, that recognized chaplains that served during the Great War. And one of the recognized chaplains was a Father William Doyle. William Doyle was a Jesuit Catholic priest assigned to the Royal Dublin Fusiliers on the Western Front. As a young boy, he wrote in his journal that to do something great and heroic may never come, but I can make my life heroic by faithfully and daily putting my best forth effort into each duty as it comes around. In his early priesthood days, Doyle's would accompany working men to and from the docks, sharing scripture with them. And then, of course, World War I kicks off. And during the war, Doyle repeatedly drugged men to safety, even during gas-borne attacks. He is quoted as saying, "My church in the trench has an altar made from piles of sandbags deep in the mud, knowing in a moment's notice the sudden call to arms would come." One dying soldier there in the trenches, his last request was to see Chaplain Doyle. Doyle clambered through the mud, the water, dodging artillery and rifle fire, and he found the soldier. And he recorded in his own biography the look of joy when Doyle knelt beside him. To a lesser degree, Chaplain Doyle's service reflects what is written by the author of Hebrews in Hebrews chapter 4, verses 14 to 15. Here the author of Hebrews records, "Since then we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God. let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. You see, if you're in the trenches, the kind of priest that you have really matters. We're all in the trenches. We're all entrenched in sin. And the kind of priest that we look to really matters. And that's what the author of Hebrews records for us in these passages. The kind of high priest that Jesus is. That Jesus is one who passed through the heavens. That he's the very Son of God. And that he is without sin. So I think, simply put, the author of Hebrews is saying that Jesus is this high priest who is above the fray. But the author of Hebrews also records that he sympathizes with our weaknesses, that he was tempted as we are. And so we see Jesus being this high priest who is also familiar with being in the fray. And for us to have really a high priest who's going to help us when we are entrenched in sin, we need a priest who is both. One who is both familiar with the fray, but also above the fray. It's amazing to think about how the author of Hebrews devotes 7 chapters to the priesthood of Jesus. And we are those who are so prone to neglect it. You see, all of the Old Testament realities point to God's provision of a priest, our need for a priest, even the shortcomings of earthly priests, which all of these point to our need of God's appointed divine priest in the person and work of Jesus Christ. Most importantly, God appoints priests. That's so important, that they're appointed by God to mediate and to mitigate our sin problem. And yet, another tension that we live with is that the scripture also refers to us as priests. Peter talks about that we are a kingdom of priests, a royal nation. So that's really what we're going to explore at this breakfast on August 2nd. We're going to explore our need for Christ's priestly work as men, and then our response as men to live as priestly men for the glory of Jesus in this generation. It'll follow the simple format that we followed in March: 30 minutes of feeding, 30 minutes of teaching, 30 minutes of discussing the content around the tables afterwards. Also on August 2nd, we're going to have a lot of major announcements about the upcoming October 16th through 19th men's hiking trip in Arkansas. Registration will begin August 2nd for that. So I just encourage you to come and hear, and maybe we'd be able to answer some of your questions about what that trip looks like. So again, just a short message, hoping to encourage you to join us next Saturday, August 2nd, from 8 to 9:30 a.m. Thanks so much for tuning in. The Lord bless you and keep you.